Chairman, and I thank the ranking member as well. Thank the witness for appearing today. I am absolutely, totally, and completely antithetical to predatory lending. I have expressed this as it relates to what we call payday lending. I've expressed this as it relates to the lending practices that took place that caused us to go into the downturn in 2008, when we had these loans that were made such that the lender, the originator, was in a position to reap benefits by forcing people into high interest rate loans with something called the yield spread premium, which we need not go into today. So I'm antithetical to predatory lending. But I do want to ask this. If China is making these loans and they are infrastructure investments in places outside of China, in Africa, which is a continent, but in countries within Africa, and in Asia, Pakistan may be one example. What happens if these countries default on those loans to China when the infrastructure is in place and the benefits have been received? What will China do such that it can continue with its efforts? What will it do?
Thank you, Mr. Green. I think that's very well put. Predatory lending, what do you get afterward? Sometimes they take physical possession of the asset.
Well, if I may just intercede, how do you take physical possession of a road, of the bridge? And in Africa, roads and bridges, things that are of benefit to people, are being constructed. How do you repossess that?
This is somewhat new in international law. So Malaysia is an example of a country which had been receiving the loans, building some of the infrastructure. There was a change of government. They found that the terms of the loans were not favorable and the construction was not favorable. And so they've tried to resist then the payments on those. And this gets into what I was mentioning earlier. China's not a member of the Paris Club, which has been a group of countries that finds a method to reschedule or to reduce a debt. If it was unfairly presented, or if the country is unable to pay it, there is a process that other countries participate in order to lower the debt and allow the country and maybe the new government to go forward.
If I may,
China doesn't participate in that.
I understand. So permit me to ask with different language, if I may. Assuming there is a total default and the country says, I cannot repay this debt, what does China do?
We discussed earlier Congo-Brazzaville, which is a case where the country is unable to pay the amount of debt that China conveyed, and yet China has not accepted the lower payment. And so we are at a point globally in the international financial system where we are pressing hard for China to realize what has happened and to lower the amount of debt. But there's not a full resolution to the point.
What will China do if the debt is not lowered? If they conclude the country receiving the loan says, I really can't pay it and I'm walking away, what will China do?
In one instance, Djibouti, China took physical possession of land as payment for the debt. Another country that's currently having debt difficulties, Gabon, is trying to work out the terms with China. So your point is well taken. Within the international law sphere, though, there is the difficulty of if there's not a bankruptcy process or there's not a debt lowering process, the lender can claim rights, which is what China has been doing, and that's what we're working hard. I mentioned in my statement, Secretary Mnuchin has launched an initiative, a powerful global initiative to force transparency of debt as a starting point in addressing the points that you're raising. Our first step in getting a resolution of this is to get the IMF and the World Bank to work with countries to make sure that they're aware of the debts that they're taking on, and then have a methodology for dealing with those debts, which they often don't have right now.
Thank you for the additional time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.